It is 6 o'clock, and I will call this special meeting of the Westwood Select Board on July 20th, 2026 to order pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 amended on March 28, 2025. Governor Moore Healey signed into law an act extending pandemic-related authorizations related to public meetings, allowing hybrid meeting options for public bodies through June 30, 2027. This meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format via Zoom and in person for the first portion of the meeting through the police chief selection agenda item. And then, in the interest of fairness for the candidates for town council, Westwood Media Center will end their live stream for the interview portion of the meeting and will upload that recording to their YouTube channel for later playback. I am Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings, Chair of the Westwood Select Board, and with me are my colleagues, Erin Sibley and Joe Prevotera. Also with us are, to Joe's right, Town Council Pat Ahern, to my left, Town Administrator Connor Reed, and here in the end, Molly Fitzpatrick, Deputy Town Administrator. With that, if I could ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, okay. Right, so we are being live streamed, I'm corrected, but not on Zoom. My apologies. So with that correction, we are going to launch right into our scheduled action with respect to the police chief selection. We interviewed 3 candidates for this position last week, and I have a few introductory comments that I'd like to make. One of the candidates last week noted in his interview that this has been a, quote, rigorous and exhaustive process. And I think we can all agree with that. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank the many people who have contributed to that exhaustive process. I want to start by thanking our many residents who have participated, including the 272 people who responded to our initial survey, residents who have participated in and provided feedback at our select board meetings at which this process has been discussed, residents who participated in the community forum that we had here a number of weeks ago, which informed the interview process with the candidates, and also the individual feedback that the members of the board have received. The foundation of effective local governance is meaningful public engagement, and we are truly grateful for it in this process. We also want to thank Chief Ken Laval and Chief John Perro of Perro Consulting and Associates for their work in conducting the structured evaluation in the assessment center, along with 4 experienced assessors who we also thank. We want to thank the members of the public safety panel who conducted interviews of the semifinalists. The panel consisted of Fire Chief Steve Lund, Assistant Fire Chief Colin McCarthy, Public Safety Communications Director Brian Camp, retired Norwood Police Chief and Westwood resident Bill Brooks, Paul McLaughlin, also a Westwood resident and Superintendent and Chief of the Bureau of Investigative Services for the Boston Police Department, and Town Administrator Connor Reed. We thank all of the Public Safety Panel members for their significant service. We also want to thank our entire team at Town Hall, especially the Executive Function Group who interviewed the candidates, everyone who provided administrative support, and especially the work of Tish Healy, Deputy Town Administrator Molly Fitzpatrick, and Town Administrator Connor Reed for their significant efforts in ensuring that this process was rigorous, fair, and exhaustive. Through the layers of this process, 22 candidates were initially vetted. After 4 candidates moved through the assessment center evaluation, they then were interviewed by the public safety panel, which unanimously advanced our 3 finalists with their assessment that each of them could perform the duties as Westwood Police Chief. All 3 candidates currently hold positions of significance in their respective communities. And I ask that tonight's discussion remain respectful and focused on each candidate's qualifications, experience, and how they align with the needs of the position. Since all 3 candidates participated in public interviews, I also ask that we avoid unnecessary comparisons or comments that could unfairly reflect on any of the candidates' reputations. All of that said, I think it is also worth acknowledging here that this is the board's opportunity to hire a new chief, and as such has allowed us to focus with the candidates and all of the assessors on a vision for the department's future, and specifically on where there is room for improvement, which is very healthy. While we responsibly identify opportunities for improvement, I think we should also acknowledge that our department currently is extremely high functioning, and that we are grateful to the men and women of the Westwood Police Department who keep us safe every day, and we thank them for their commitment to our community. We fortunately have a low crime rate and a very low violent crime rate in Westwood. The Westwood Police Department routinely draws high-quality candidates because it is a department that police officers want to work in, evidenced by the high-caliber candidates who were drawn to this position. The Westwood PD is professionally accredited, financially well-managed, highly trained, well-equipped, and has low rates of turnover and complaints. When we talk about the accreditation of the department, I think it's important to understand that the accreditation through the Mass Police Accreditation Commission has been achieved by only 120 of the 351 municipalities in Massachusetts. And it's also important to recognize that the accreditation reflects not only that our department has adopted the best practices and policies, but also that they are adhering to them based on the Commission's on-site assessments. The accreditation is a marker of organizational excellence, which we can be proud of as a community. The survey responses we received from residents reflected a belief in the department's strong performance in day-to-day operations and responsiveness, professionalism, and community interaction. Residents' responses highlighted the following areas to focus on in the recruitment process: organizational culture, internal cohesion, transparency, accountability, and community engagement. So it is with that backdrop that we have this discussion. Throughout this process, and as reflected in our interviews last week, we have focused as a board on the following key areas for the role, which were informed by the community feedback that we received. Number 1, ethical community policing and leadership, with a focus on transparency and accountability. Number 2, community engagement and visibility. Number 3, internal culture and morale. Number 4, personnel management, including hiring, promotion, mentoring, and discipline. Number 5, community collaboration and inclusion, specifically the relationship with schools. 6, labor management relationships and peer supports. 7, public communication and social media. 8, budgeting and financial management. And 9, we talked about traffic enforcement. Now, obviously, there's a lot of overlap among these areas, and this is not an exhaustive list. In order to focus our deliberations in a way that is respectful, clear, and focused on objective criteria, my suggestion is that we discuss which candidate best demonstrated those criteria. To reiterate, we are in the very fortunate position of having 3 highly qualified candidates. And the question before us is, which one of these candidates is the best fit for the position and for the future of the department? I have been talking for a while now, so let me just pause here to ask if you agree that is a good way to proceed. If so, I'm happy to share my thoughts, or also happy to defer to one of you if you would like a break in listening to me.
No, I think that's a good way to proceed.
Joe? Okay. So I want to reiterate that all of these candidates are highly qualified, and in my opinion, all of them have demonstrated strengths in all of the areas that are important to us. So I will begin with my thoughts on the first prong, if you will, that I listed out there, which I took from our interview areas: ethical community policing and leadership, with a focus on transparency and accountability, which arguably may be the most important criterion for the position. With respect to leadership, I feel that I must first acknowledge the very significant military leadership of Deputy Superintendent Russell O'Neill, which is a distinguishing factor as to him, and to thank him for his service, which is impressive. All 3 candidates have been in leadership roles in their respective departments. All 3 talked about leading by example. Of the 3 candidates, Lieutenant Dalala has been in the number 2 position in his department, the Westwood PD, although we do not technically have a deputy chief position. The other 2 candidates have been one further position away from the chief role. Lieutenant Dalala has worked as the administrative coordinator, and in that role, he was the accreditation manager and responsible for the department achieving accreditation, which is a major accomplishment, as I mentioned earlier. He has also served as training coordinator for the department. Leadership as chief of police also requires sound judgment, particularly in sensitive and crisis situations. To that end, an assessment center with a structured evaluation took place during this process, and we heard from Chief Laval and Chief Perro as to how that assessment center was conducted with outside evaluators. And it was designed to test decision-making and judgment. Lieutenant Dalala had the strongest performance at the assessment center. In particular, he performed the strongest and notably higher on the tactical exercise, which involved a hypothetical situation involving ICE agents in Westwood, which is a scenario that many residents in Westwood have expressed concerns about, and where Lieutenant Dalala scored the highest with respect to his exercise and understanding of authority in that hypothetical situation. He also scored the highest on the employee issue exercise, which tested the handling of an employee issue that may require discipline, corrective action, and/or counsel. And he scored highest overall among the 3 candidates in the entire assessment center evaluation. Lieutenant Dalala's strong comparative performance at the assessment center and his tested leadership in the positions that he has held, along with his demonstrated commitment and deep understanding of our community and the department, lead me to believe that he has best met the criteria for leadership in this position, and that he is the best fit for the position. Lieutenant Dalala specifically talked about accountability, building transparency, and the value that discipline and accountability have in making the department more responsive to the community. He is clearly qualified to lead the department, and of the 3 candidates, I think he is in the best position to do so. I'll turn it to whoever would like to go next.
Sure, I'm happy to go next. Unlike Marianne, I put less weight on the assessment center scores because they were hypothetical situations, and I found that the range of final scores between the candidates was not significant enough to be particularly persuasive in my point of view. Lieutenant Delala's final score total was a 91, and the other two candidates scored 88 and 84. So to me, those are all excellent scores for that exercise. I feel that, in my opinion, Deputy Superintendent O'Neill has more proven and tested practical leadership experience than Lieutenant Delala. He is one of 4 deputy superintendents in a police department that is almost 4 times the size of our town. So our population is 16,000. He's one of 4 deputy superintendents in a town whose population is 63,000. So although he's above, their structure is a chief, a superintendent, and 4 deputy superintendents, but their department has 140 sworn officers versus 33 in Westwood. So I feel that although he's 2 steps below the chief, the level of responsibility that he has in a department in a community of that size would make a transition to the chief position in Westwood almost a lateral move in terms of he would be the chief, but I think he would actually have fewer people reporting to him than he currently has now. So I also was noted and was impressed by his Army National Guard experience, where he has also commanded large groups of teams. And also in the interview, I thought that he would be most ready to lead on day one. Although he does not have the, obviously he's not an internal candidate, and I started off with a preference for an internal candidate because I think there are a lot of benefits to the town for hiring an internal candidate. I thought I was very impressed by his level of presentation and preparation at the interviews. He seemed to know the Westwood and the issues almost, as well, if not better, than the other candidates, based on his clearly very thorough preparation. I also thought he understood the other top priorities. So I focused on the top 3, which were transparency and accountability, community engagement and visibility, and internal cohesion and fairness. I know there's more, but I kind of focused on those 3. And on those 3, he, in his opening statement, he addressed some of the, he said many of the things I wanted to hear from our candidate in his opening statements, which showed me that he had very thoroughly reviewed the surveys and the specific action steps that came out of the surveys. So for me, I thought that he was also the only candidate who mentioned the senior citizens in terms of another group that we asked the question, how would you begin to engage with the community? And all 3 candidates talked about the youth in the schools, and I think that's very important. He was the only candidate who said I would also reach out to the seniors, which I thought was notable. I just thought that he's focusing on listening, and he wants to have a one-on-one with every officer in the department. I thought he addressed the issues that came up in the survey, particularly some of the internal departmental issues, by saying he would sit down with every officer in the department one-on-one and quote-unquote drill down regarding their grievances. So I thought that acknowledgement that there are some issues internally and a willingness to sit down with people and discuss them and address them impressed me quite a bit. He mentioned that they don't have school resource officers in Brookline, which was something the community voted on, I believe, around COVID. And it was clear from the way he was talking about that makes the police department's job much more difficult when they don't have school resource officers. But I was impressed by his the way he handled it professionally and sort of without disparaging the voters of his community or the select board of Brookline or whoever is responsible for removing the school resource officers from their schools, it was clear that that made his job harder, but so you could tell he was clear with stating his position while being respectful to the process that got them there. So I thought that showed a very high level of emotional intelligence and acuity in dealing with various constituencies. And finally, in his closing remarks, he mentioned a lawsuit in which he is a named defendant. He had already disclosed that to us. We knew about it. It was by virtue, I believe, of his being in that role. But it impressed me that in his final remarks, he wanted to raise that to make sure that everyone was aware of it, and that if people had questions, he would answer it. And to me, that showed a very high level of personal integrity and accountability, that he wanted to make sure that nothing was being swept under the rug. And so to me, a leader sort of acknowledges the good and the bad, and you can't solve the problems without acknowledging them. And I thought that he did a good job of presenting himself as that type of leader. So in my opinion, I think he would be a very effective chief on day one.
Thanks, Aaron. Joe?
Well, we challenged Connor to give us some wonderful candidates. I wish we weren't as vigorous with that because it made the weekend a long weekend, but you did a good job, Connor. You gave us some good people, and I appreciate that.
To the team.
They are all stellar officers. Absolutely. I'm sure, like you, I spent a number of hours reviewing the tape. Before we started, I took our questions and I put down some answers because I like to have, when I interview someone, I like to check things off as we go along. It's so subjective. I try to look for something objective, so when I step back, I can take a look at it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I watched the tapes again, to make sure I hadn't missed anything. I have a great deal of respect for Mike Delala. I agree with you. But as I looked at this, it seemed to me as though the candidates lined up depending upon their time in rank or time on the job, is how I saw it. I, like Aaron, was impressed with Deputy Superintendent O'Neill. I very much appreciated his enthusiasm, and that, I like that. I like that a lot, because what I've learned is enthusiasm with the good candidates moves on to a passion. When I've hired respiratory therapists that are enthusiastic, they're the ones who start organizing things within the department. They're the ones that get involved with the state society. They're the ones coming to me, I want to go to the national meeting. And I was impressed with that from Mr. O'Neill. I also, you don't know, but you probably figured out, but Mary Ann knows that I do tend to look at numbers from time to time. And I've learned the secret to mastering any skill, whether it be you guys doing a deposition or me doing a medical procedure or doing a traffic stop or shooting three-pointers. The secret to that is repetitions, over and over and over, and you get good at it. You get good at it. And when I looked at the numbers, and I agree with you, Aaron, when I looked at 102 officers plus a domestic violence unit, and then the 4 clinicians, that's an awful lot of opportunity to have what I call encounters with your staff. I was impressed with his vision when he spoke about, and I caught it also, Aaron, about, it's really, what's the term he used? I think it was bookends. We've got our young. He's really excited about about the youth. He's impressed with the police department and their Explorer post, and he's also very cognizant of senior citizens in the community. And shoot, along with having all of the encounters with his own staff, he's had an awful lot of encounters with community groups in his community. So I liked his vision. When things come close to equal, and I was kind of weighing the candidates. When they come close, I have to be honest, I have, in my mind, if they're close, if they're equal or close to equal, I have learned to take into consideration some other factors, one of those being a military veteran. And that means a lot to me. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Mary Ann. It means an awful lot to me. They just come in the door with a different perspective, a more measured perspective, and they seem to be very, very, so I put a lot of weight in hiring a veteran. In fact, I hired a Master Navy diver who was, had retired, and shoot, he was just outstanding in the department. Deputy O'Neill is a veteran who served overseas. He brought his platoon over, he brought his platoon home, he went out on route clearing packs. He wasn't going down Main Street shaking hands. He was out shaking the trees for bad guys. And that takes a lot of courage and a lot of respect from his staff to get the job done right. I think he'll bring that courage, that stamina, that vision to the Westwood Police Department. So I'm very much in favor. I agree with Aaron on Deputy Superintendent O'Neill.
I'll just comment. I want to second everything you just said about Deputy Superintendent's military experience. I led with that, and I absolutely agree with you about that. I do think, though, that, as you said, all things, if all things are equal, and I, too, was extremely impressed by all three candidates. I think one of the areas that we've talked about throughout this process has been morale in the department. And I want to talk about that a moment because I'm very concerned about it, and I'm sure you both are as well. We want and need to have a healthy department. And in light of Lieutenant Delala's strong performance against the field of the other candidates, and arguably stronger performance, at least as far as the Objective Assessment Center goes, I do believe we risk undermining morale in the department in bypassing the strong performance, again, arguably stronger, of the internal candidate in favor of an external candidate. I fear that we will communicate that Westwood does not believe the department is adequately developing leadership and that more junior officers do not have a realistic opportunity for promotion. I know for a fact this is a major concern of the union and the more junior officers, and I worry that we risk a significant loss of retention and recruiting of talent given all of these circumstances. To this point, I received an email from a resident following our interviews, and I believe it was sent to all of us, urging that we strongly consider Lieutenant Delala's candidacy, but she put this in a more eloquent way and in a more positive light. And I just want to quote from her letter. She wrote, quote, "Promoting a qualified leader from within sends a powerful message to every member of the police department. It demonstrates that dedication, integrity, and years of committed service are valued by the town. It reinforces the principle that employees who continually develop their skills, accept increasing responsibility, and demonstrate effective leadership have a meaningful opportunity to advance. That message strengthens morale, encourages professional growth and helps retained talented officers who have invested their careers in serving this community." Close quote. Again, I think this is about the right fit for the department and the future of the department under all of the circumstances, and particularly in light of the impact on the department, notwithstanding the excellence of all three candidates, which is, I think, undisputed here. I do think that Lieutenant Delala is the best fit, and I think we as a board all need to consider the impact on our department, the men and women of the department going forward with this decision, which I'm sure you are. But I wanted to bring that issue particularly to your attention.
I did receive that email, and I want to specifically thank, and I've spoken and heard from a number of residents over the weekend since the interviews, and I'm extremely grateful for all of the feedback and the community engagement. It was very thoughtful, and I did think about that a lot. And I, as I say, I started off inclined to go for, to support the internal candidate because I do think it's good for morale. And it creates an opportunity for somebody else. Somebody moves up, it creates an opportunity for somebody else. It's a smaller department. So those opportunities are not as frequent as, police officers might like. So retention and morale is really important to me. What struck me through this process was the survey. So we did, in the internal survey, which is the survey of members of the department, 53% had a somewhat or very positive overall impression of the department. 16% were neutral, and 32% were somewhat or very negative. And now I have not gone through all the surveys. This is based on the summary of the surveys, which I think Molly wrote. So I haven't read every response, but that was the executive summary. What I wanted to see from Lieutenant Delala during the process was just an acknowledgement of that. I agree that the department is extremely professional. It's very highly regarded, but there are some issues in the department, and there are definitely some internal divisions that came through very clear in the survey results. And what I wanted to see was an acknowledgement that there are lots of things that we're doing right, and there are other things that we need to change, which was the purpose of the survey. I'd love to do things like that all the time because I think that feedback is essential to continuous improvement, which I think is everybody's goal. So what I was hoping to see from Lieutenant Delala was an acknowledgement of that. If I were going to take over department and only 53% of my employees felt that there was a positively towards it, that would be something I would wish to immediately address. And in fact, in the survey, there were specific action items listed as recommended from employees that they would like to see the next chief take in terms of addressing some of those internal issues. And I was really hoping to see during our interview process or in his application materials, just an acknowledgement that there's certain things that need attention, and here is my plan for addressing them. So he was the interim chief for 10 weeks, and I did not see any movement on any of these areas that to me were laid out very clearly that needed attention. The sooner the better. So for me, unfortunately, that suggested those 10 weeks to me were more persuasive than some of the other assessment factors, because to me that was a 10-week long interview process. I mean, it's not the same when you're the chief or the interim chief, but you can certainly do certain things. For example, one of the 3 things was community presence, social media, communication. And this morning I went onto the Westwood PD website, and the chief's message has not been updated. So it's still a photo of our former chief and his old statement. Now, you don't have to revamp the whole website, but I think if the community survey says we'd like more communication and more visibility and more interaction, I think an interim might have updated the homepage just to say our chief has retired and thank him for his service, and now we have an interim and just a brief introduction. I'm the interim and this is the process. So the fact that I feel like the surveys are saying we need more communication and things like that were not done over 10 weeks, to me is an indication that there may be some blind spots with Lieutenant Delala in terms of some of the issues in the department. So to me, that was an overriding consideration, which is why I think that Superintendent O'Neill is a better candidate.
I'd like to just respond to a couple of those points. I'm not sure it's fair on all points in terms of the vision that Lieutenant Delala may have for the department as chief, to expect that he would implement that while interim and not having the authority, knowing that a new chief is coming in and it may not be him. That said, he was very clear in outlining his priorities going forward, which included social media. It's clear that we need that. I understand that in the past, before the current town administration, there had been instruction not to do that, and we've seen some of the vestiges of that. But in any event, that was one of his priorities, as was increased visibility of the chief and the officers, and even stronger relationship with the schools. He mentioned having liaisons, much like Norwood did, and wanting to have a second SRO position. But that said, as to the internal survey, which did not include all members of the department, and it was Deputy Superintendent O'Neill who said in his interview that there is not a police department in the nation without cliques or factions. And I think we actually heard that in one way or another from all of the candidates. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. But based on the evidence that I have seen, I think that is a small minority of the department. And from what I have seen outwardly from the department over the last few months, it appears that morale of the department is high. And as one example, I would point to the sea of blue that we saw at the Memorial Day observance. For those who have attended that observance for many years, you know that that was an incredible showing by our police department, far greater than certainly I had ever seen, and I think most have seen. And I see nodding heads in the audience. And that showing was made while Lieutenant Delala was the interim chief. And it was not missed by the people who were there. I would also point to the union's retirement event for the outgoing chief, which I attended, in which a large majority of the department was present and expressed high morale in their public remarks and also in their interactions with me. The morale in the department appears to be quite high, and the department itself is functioning very well. There is room for improvement, clearly. We have identified those areas. Lieutenant Delala has identified those areas. And again, given that we have a highly functioning department, we have outward signs that the department is functioning better with Lieutenant Delala as the interim chief. I think it will be a real hit to the department not to hire the internal candidate who has, at least based on the assessment center conducted by the professionals. We are not public safety professionals, therefore we hired the professionals to do that. According to those professionals, retired police chiefs, Lieutenant Delala outperformed the competition, and to not hire the internal candidate under all of those circumstances, I think would be a huge hit to the morale and a mistake as far as the future of the department.
Full disclosure, I did meet with Mike prior to the interviews, had a great discussion. And I have to go on the record and tell the two of you, Mike has taken some, what I call noteworthy steps, which I was very happy to hear. I'm going to go back to a couple of things, Mary Ann. I mean, you can keep running it up the flagpole, but I'm going to tell you that I'm going to go back to that continuum of years in service, years in rank, and experience. And I understand completely what you're saying. I get it. I absolutely get it. And I share your concern. But the overwhelming fact, first of all, I think Ken and Jack do a great job. I think our own committee did an excellent job. But the truth is, that's one snapshot. That's just one narrow window as far as Jack's system with evaluating them. I'm looking at, and I think Aaron's doing the same thing, looking at an officer who has many years of experience, not only in the police force, but also in the military. And I understand. And Connor's, I don't think he's sick of it yet, but he's probably getting pretty close to me saying, what we need is a little tincture of time. And I'll be honest, I think that's what Mike Deliberation needs. There's absolutely no doubt he'll be a chief. I have no doubt that he'll be a chief. And I think the people on the committees agree. But stacked up against these three candidates, it wasn't time, is what I saw. And I saw a candidate with so many encounters, so much experience, so much deliberate and conscious thought process during our interviews. I'm going to stick with Deputy Superintendent O'Neill.
Well, I will take a motion. Let's see.
I move to appoint Russell O'Neill to the position of Chief of Police for the town of Westwood. Said appointment contingent upon the successful completion of Corey Sori and any other applicable background screening and pre-employment documentation for the Westwood Human Resources and Police Departments, and successful negotiation of an employment agreement to be ratified by the Select Board with start date to be established through said employment agreement.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, it should be by roll call
Okay.
for an appointment.
Mary Ann knew that. She was just testing you.
It can be roll call.
Joe?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
I vote no. That is a vote in favor.
I further move to authorize the town administrator in coordination with town council to negotiate a proposed employment agreement with the chief, subject to final review and approval by the select board at a future meeting date.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call, Joe?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
I vote aye on that motion. All right, we are now going to take a break before our next agenda item, which is the interviewing of the town council candidates. And we will conclude the Westwood Media Center live stream at this point.
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. I have not participated in anything with the replacement town council, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Noted, Councilor Ahern. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. All right, we will take a break.
Oh.
We're out.
No?
Hello.
Hi.
Lauren Goldberg, good to see you again.
How you been?
Okay, thank you. Nice
Good
to
to
see you
see
again.
you.
Amy Questle.
Amy?
Nice to see you.
Roger Smerage.
Hi,
Roger.
Amy Questle.
Smerage.
Mary.
Good to see you.
again.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, this was part of the
test.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
It's an honor. Good to see you again.
And I'm Molly.
Hi,
Nice to meet you.
meet you.
All right, we will now begin our second phase of this meeting with town council interviews. Our first candidate is KP Law. Following brief public introductions, we have 8 prepared questions, And to maintain time for follow-ups, we'd ask that you please try to answer your questions in about 3 minutes. And you will be given an opportunity for a brief closing statement. For the record, I'm Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings, Chair of the Westwood Select Board, and with me are my colleagues, Aaron Sibley and Joe Prevotera. And we warmly welcome you and ask you to please introduce yourselves.
Yes, well, thank you so much. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Lauren Goldberg. I am the managing attorney at KP Law, and with me are my colleagues Roger Smerage and Amy Questle. Amy wasn't on the actual proposal, but knowing there were some land use questions, Amy is the chair of that area of law, and so she joined us and would be assigned as that area of law contact if we were to move forward.
Wonderful. If I could ask you to please take 3 to 5 minutes to further introduce yourself and your firm's approach to providing counsel services to a municipality like Westwood.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I think I'll start, and then I'll ask Roger and Amy to tell you about themselves. I think, obviously, the town is going through a bit of change with respect to legal counsel services. For many, many years, you've had a solo practitioner, an in-house counsel, and that kind of comes with its own way of counseling. And so going to a firm is going to feel like a change, and we understand that. And we want to assure you that KP believes in relationships. We believe in establishing relationships. We are both accessible and available. We believe in responsiveness. And I say we, as the managing attorney, I'm responsible for kind of setting the standards and firm policies and procedures along with the rest of the management committee. And this is something that is exceptionally important to the firm and has been since we took over as owners in 2013. And there's about 23 owners at the firm. We have one of the firm's setup is essentially intended to allow for people with expertise to be assigned and functional in your day-to-day with your staff and with your boards and committees. You wouldn't want me doing land use law. I'm not a land use lawyer. I am a general municipal lawyer. I've practiced general municipal law since 1996, giving away too much perhaps, working for the Secretary of State before I came to KP Law. So my areas of expertise include open meeting law, public records law, town meeting, charter, review, implementation, enforcement, bylaws, special acts, municipal finance, and elections, as well as many other areas of law. And you'll find that all of us at KP Law are general municipal lawyers with these specialty areas of expertise. Knowing that it is highly difficult for one person to provide everything that's needed in today's complicated legal world, we create a very small team of subject matter experts so that you do have the best of all worlds, essentially. Amy would be your land use contact, Roger would be your backup, and he would oversee litigation. But we have people that do anything from cable licensing to to permitting, to bond counsel work. You can think about it, we do it. And we have what we consider very much a town hall atmosphere. Outside of my door, it might be a town clerk, and outside of Jeff Blake or Tom McEnany's door, it might be town treasurer. Why KP then? We are the longest existing municipal law firm. We are the best staffed municipal law firm. There are any number of awards that our attorneys have received from Mass Lawyers Weekly, from their colleagues, and that's all wonderful. But what really makes us different is we are on your side all the time. We do not represent we do not represent private developers or private employees against municipalities. We have never done that, and we will not do that. We are always on your side. I also want to point out that we've had experience with the town of Westwood for a very long time, since at least 2010. And I could get into some of the things we've done here, but at least some of you I know are familiar with that. Anywhere from open meeting public records, trainings, we do your tax title work currently. We really believe that our framework, our infrastructure the way our firm works, can kind of step in during this time of change for you and provide that continuity and expertise that you need. So with that, I would turn to Roger.
So, hi, Roger Smerage. I'll give a minute introduction. I've been practicing as an attorney for more than 15 years with significant litigation experience in state and federal court. In 2020, I started getting involved in the municipal government in the town where I live, Wenham, up on the North Shore. I first sought appointment to a town government study committee when the town was investigating expanding the size of its select board. From there, I ran and got elected town moderator in 2021. Through that experience, I got to know Lauren and some of the other members of the KP team, and shortly thereafter, I decided that's where I wanted to be as a practicing attorney, and I've loved it ever since. I'm primary counsel for 4 of our towns, and for those towns, I provide general municipal services across the board, town meeting, which you could expect as a town moderator. I love town meeting. I carry my copy of town meeting time in my car wherever I go. And the other half of my practice is litigation and bankruptcy services. I've been doing that type of work since day one when I first became an attorney. So that's just a quick overview of my practice, and I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Amy Questle. I have been practicing for 26 years and in land use, purely land use. I'm the chair of the land use department at KP. I also have some specialty work with conservation, with 40Bs, which can be quite onerous and controversial at some points, but we have to, advise the zoning board because it's not their usual special permit or variance. It's a much more complicated matter. So I do a lot of 40Bs, and I feel that I can actually relate to boards and what boards are going through. I've served on numerous boards in my town. I served 13 years as a conservation commissioner. I've served on zoning board, community preservation. So, I can relate to the board members when they're getting yelled at or questions that are not within their jurisdiction. And, but I truly enjoy it. And then the other thing that I do is I track the legislation. So all of the new legislation that comes out that's related to land use, I have to be on top of that and figure out how is that going to affect our cities and towns. We get e-updates out right away. As you know, there were changes in the budget, and then there's also some changes in the economic development bill that were in front of the Senate today. We're going to allow duplexes on every single lot in towns and cities. So we're tracking that. That's not final. I don't want to panic anybody. But so I also do that. And again, I truly love my job. I really do.
Thank you for the introduction. I know Joe has a question for you, but before he asks it, if you'll indulge me, I realized I forgot to mention at the outset that we will be interviewing 2 firms tonight that have been recommended to us by the Town Council Screening Committee. I want to recognize Lou Rizzoli, who is here, who is the co-chair of that committee, along with Connor Reed. Also serving on that committee, Aaron Sibley as the Select Board Representative, Phil Giordano from the Planning Board, Jim O'Sullivan, who is our Town Moderator, Nora Loughnane, also here, our Director of Community and Economic Development, Dottie Powers, and Todd Korchin, our DPW Director. So with that, I will turn it over to Joe.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Westwood has historically operated with an in-house town council model. I'd say forever. What opportunities and challenges do you see for us transitioning to a law firm model, and how would you ensure continuity of legal services while building trust with the elected officials, staff, and boards? And I'm going to add a section here about the training sessions, Lauren, that you mentioned in your proposal. Tell me a little bit about who those are
Yes.
directed towards.
I'd be happy to. I want to just grab my pen because you asked a lot of questions. I want to make sure I get to them. There is, I believe there will be challenges moving from a solo practitioner who, I mean, if we're talking about Mr. Ahern, he knows everything there is to know about Westwood. He knows the people, he knows the places, he knows the history. We will not be able to duplicate that. And what we will do is build new relationships. We'll build new relationships with the board, with the town administrator, the assistant town administrator, and all of the boards and committees. The way that we work is that typically I would be interacting with you all about, things like town meeting and open meeting, public records, conflict of interest, and that kind of thing. So we would be building a relationship in that regard. Amy, for example, would be doing the land use work. So she would be interacting with the planner and the zoning, planning, and conservation boards. And she would go to their meetings, she would meet them and shake hands and make sure that they knew who she was, not just a person on the other end of a phone or on a screen. We would all, the three of us, would come to a department head meeting if Connor and Molly would be willing to put that together, where we would meet all of the staff. Obviously, some staff we already know, but that's different. It's different to work with someone once in a while and then to be their actual lawyer. So we would try to do that, and we would also, if it was something that the board and the town administrator was interested in, be happy to do office hours, whether that's once a week or once every other week, again, to give the opportunity for in-person exchanges of information and ideas. We work all the time on Zoom, and there's, no downside to being able to see another person when you're talking to them, which wasn't always possible before COVID, as we know. But there's also nothing like in-person interactions. I live very close by. I could be here, at the drop of a hat to assist in any way that was needed. In terms of trainings, we have a robust training program. And by robust, I mean we do training on a very large range of issues. Most common is open meeting, public records, conflict of interest law, sexual harassment prevention training. We do how to write a defensible decision, how to run a public hearing. We do Community Preservation Act committee trainings, trying to explain the municipal finance implications of the law, because it matters how much money there is to spend. And we do other trainings as well. And I've done some of them here in the past, public records, open meeting law, also the First Amendment auditor training, which has been, the First Amendment auditors have been going all around the state, kind of testing municipalities' ability to respond to them coming in with a phone, basically, and recording during regular business hours. And so we've helped municipalities change some of their physical arrangement of furniture and office space, as well as doing posting and really trying to give employees the words that they need to, the words and the ideas that they need to manage that type of thing. So we would do everything we could, especially, at the beginning, everything is no charge. Doesn't matter whether you chose, any of our various fee schedules, even if it's hourly, all of the work I'm talking about would be done at no charge. For us, it's an investment in the future. It's an investment in the relationships, and that's very important. In addition, and kind of as a corollary to those actual trainings Amy mentioned, we do have what we call an e-update service. And what that is anything that's breaking news, we analyze and email to our municipalities so that they are prepared, at least for a conversation, if a question comes up at a meeting. So we just did one on the budget amendments to variances, and that we got out right away, and a number of clients have already, called, unfortunately. And we
It's a little bit
did,
of panic.
we did bring that to our earlier interview. So we aren't going to be an in-house town council, but we hope it feels like we're an in-house town council. You would understand me to be your town council in the traditional Pat Ahern sense, but you would have the support of subject matter experts as well.
have a follow-up on that. You represent about 150 different municipalities. I assume many of them have made this transition over to you over the years.
Yes.
And you also have the benefit of knowing Westwood quite a bit from the work that you've done with us over the years. So given those experiences, what are you expecting are going to be our pain points in this transition?
Well, thank you. That is a really good follow-up question. And, I think it's, at the beginning, we won't know everything that you're dealing with. And so, and that would be if you had a new in-house town council as well. But you're so used to, past reservoir of knowledge, and Tom McCusker before him. So it's a little bit of a catch-up and being patient with us while we do learn what your priorities are, where the town's interests lie. Is it the fire station project? Is it, a development project? Is it the school project? Those are the types of things that it's important for us to know. We would also see that there would need to be a formal transition where Pat would essentially sit down and run us through all of the legal issues that he's been dealing with that are active and maybe anything important that he thinks has been solved. Because you want your counsel to be someone you trust, that has to be earned. And, we would show up each time and try to earn that trust. And, I wouldn't be sitting here today, and neither would Roger and Amy if we didn't have that experience. Partly it's a partnership with the town administrator. What kind of access do employees and board and committee members have to town council? And how do we manage that? There are times when an in-house, solo practitioner is kind of used to taking calls from everybody. They know enough to ask the question that really matters. When there's a new town council or a new firm, we get questions from one board member, or we get questions from another, we might get a question from the planner. We have to make sense of all of that. So trying to understand what the access to council policy is, still being there for board and committee members who are used to having access, and also making sure that Connor knows everything that's going on, and we would copy him on everything, and that the staff has the support that it needs to deal with these issues. There's nothing worse than getting to a meeting and looking to your, trusted partner and that person looking back and saying, huh? So we never want you to be in that spot. And, we, as I said, we invest for the long run. It's not about just getting a town and having that be a notch on any kind of belt. All of the towns that we represent are our towns. And, when new people come to the firm, I think Roger, we'll say, well, we da-da-da, and they're like, wait, who? We? Because we see our relationship as a partnership, and we want to be that partner for you.
And I can speak to that personally. Wenham, about a dozen years ago or so, had a 25-year in-house town council retire, and KP stepped in and jumped into the void, and I wouldn't be here if they didn't do a good job, because if they didn't do a good job with that transition, I wouldn't have wanted to work with Lauren and the rest of the team. So I've been on transition teams since joining KP, and we have a process for it, and I think it runs pretty smoothly.
Thank you.
Could you please share with the board who is the proposed primary legal counsel, who is the backup, and how does your firm decide who's handling which case? And as a follow-up, how regularly can we expect to work directly with primary counsel?
So I am proposed as your primary counsel, and you would likely, or Connor would likely work with me every day. Or Molly, calls every day back and forth, emails. I would be the person that comes to your select board meetings. And so you would think of me as your traditional town council. Roger would serve as the backup, and that would mean that if there was a select board meeting, in theory, every once in a while, I'll go on vacation. Roger would be the person who would take my spot. He would also be familiar with your charter, with your bylaws, with ongoing matters. As he mentioned, we have a good team approach that's proven. We've been doing it for over 40 years. And we are the ones that kind of came up with this, not me personally, it's before my time, but this idea of a full-service law firm, municipal law firm with all of the expertise in-house. And, I think the land use department would say, Lauren is fine, and we appreciate that she can give us open meeting law and conflict of interest law information and help at town meeting on, explaining this to town meeting. But Amy would be doing the heavy lifting in that area, and they would know her and trust her. And Roger would be overseeing litigation. Roger has that background. He also knows which hat to wear, and he puts on that municipal lawyer hat when he is giving advice and when he's providing guidance on litigation. And then finally, one of the benefits of a firm like ours is that all the different parts speak to each other. So Roger may be handling a case that went to litigation that Amy worked on with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I appeared before you to explain what the risks and benefits were. So we are talking to each other. Connor or Molly or you all, you don't need to manage outside counsel. You're not responsible for figuring out what they have and what they don't have. We have everything. That's my job, to be clear on who's doing what. And I would work with Connor to try and make sure we had the right people in each of these areas. I used the example in our earlier interview with the committee of land use, right? So some towns have a lot of conservation land issues, and their conservation commissions are very active. In other towns, it's all about variances. So we look at, what kind of need is there, and then we identify the small team together. Tom McEnany has been working with your tax collector. His area of expertise is contracts and procurement, so he would be part of the team as well. So that is kind of how it plays out. Subject matter drives the particular person that's going to handle that complicated issue. I handle everything that's regular municipal work and anything that's, in any of the areas of my expertise, municipal finance, for example, or, charter review or drafting special legislation, helping with town meeting, so.
But we all do know, Lauren keeps us informed of everything. Even if it's not land use, I get to hear about it.
Yes.
But just because we need to know. So we talk all the time. The three of us will be talking all the time about Westwood and keeping each other up to date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In your view, what is your role in terms of advising the select board and the municipal team? And as part of your answer, can you give an example where you helped a municipality navigate a complex legal issue, but which also had community or political implications as well?
All of them. Well, we at the firm have a very rigid policy about our role. And we do not see ourselves as decision makers. Our job is to provide you with information, to provide you with counsel. Here is a level of risk if you go in this direction, here's a level of risk if you go in that direction. But we do not put ourselves in the middle of your policy decisions. If you are asking us for advice on whether a particular case is worth litigating, we're going to tell you, here's what we think the likelihood of success is, but just because this, case may not be winnable doesn't mean it's not worthwhile for the town. And that decision is your decision. Once you've made the decision, in executive session, we are your strongest advocates. We are not going out there to say, well, we don't know, that wasn't a good, that is not the way that we work. And frankly, it would be inconsistent with our obligations, our fiduciary obligations, but our obligations to the bar as well. I would say almost every issue that we deal with at a select board meeting, and no one knows that better than you, has implications that go far beyond money, goes far beyond a single decision. So we are very aware, given we represent about 130 cities and towns, But we're very aware that something that may not seem like a big deal to us could be a huge deal for the community. And we try to be aware and careful about that. We will always give you the right answer. We're not, we understand and believe that you need the right answer. If this board, 10 years from now looks different, we're still gonna give the right answer to the same question. What you do with that may be different, and we will support that. In terms of how dealing with the public, I go to town meetings all over the state. I've been doing that since the year 2000. I go to select board meetings all over the state. And again, I think every town has its own personality, and the role of town council in that can differ. If you want me to be up front and answer the question and explain the way the law applies and what the issues are, then I'm going to do that. If you say, you know what, Lauren, this is our issue, we don't want you to speak for us, I'm going to sit down and wait for you to ask me to participate. I'm going to share my ideas and thoughts with you, but that doesn't mean that I share them with the entire community. And I think in today's world, as we know, everything is public, or almost everything is public. And so we always have to be thoughtful about that. We're on TV, where we read about ourselves in blogs, we read about ourselves in local newspapers, and sometimes we don't appreciate that. But in that way, we are very similar to you. We have a very public role. So we're sensitive to it, we're paying attention to it, and we work a lot with the town administrator and the chair ahead of time. If there's going to be an important meeting, I have a meeting with a board chair and vice chair tomorrow to talk about presenting something exceptionally controversial. We're going to talk about the strategy of it, but then also, how do you deal with the person who wants to go back and forth with the board over and over and over? How do you deal with the person that's speaking negatively? What extent of authority does the chair have to say, you know what, that's enough? And we know after the Barron v. Kalinda case, it's much less than it used to be. But that is part of what makes us municipal counsel, and not just lawyers who know municipal law.
A quick follow-up on that. With respect to litigation, would any litigation handled by your firm for us be handled by a trial lawyer? And would we have access to the trial lawyer when we're being advised about the risks of litigation?
Do you want to grab that?
Yeah, I am a trial lawyer. I've tried cases in Superior Court. I tried a case down in Bristol County last November, 4-day jury trial. So and got a favorable verdict for the town. So part of the litigation service that I would provide is providing that view from day one of the case, whether it's a case that the town wants to bring or a case that the town is defending, all the way up through the potential for trial and even thereafter, potential appeals and things like that. That way you have the full view of what a life of a case may look like. How long of a trial would this look like? What options would be available in terms of witnesses, things like that, and really, is it going to be a one-day trial that maybe that's an expense that the board is willing to entertain for a particular issue, or does this look like it's a 2-week trial? Whether spread out over multiple weeks if it's a bench trial. So I will, provide that information, and to the point that Lauren made, give you the advice and counsel for you to ultimately make the decision on whether to pursue litigation, whether to defend actively or, cut the cord if there's a way of cutting the cord on a particular matter that you're defending. So yeah, you get that experience as part of the litigation experience that I've had. And it's not just in the municipal realm. That's where you get an additional benefit. Yes, I've litigated municipal law cases, but I've also had years of experience litigating commercial cases, banking cases. I spent the first 9 years of my practice at a global law firm that has an office here in Boston. And then I spent 4 years practicing at a boutique business law firm in Boston as part of their litigation practice. So you get that big law experience, you get that small law experience, and then you get that municipal law experience from a litigation standpoint.
And one further follow-up, how does it work on the land use side if we've got a case that's got to be tried?
Yeah.
So I try cases also. And then when the cases are particularly complex, I actually try them with Roger. So you would have, or whether it be the zoning board, the planning board, but also, definitely the select board, you would probably have both of us come in at an executive session, and I would give you the background and the legal advice on the actual permit that's being appealed, et cetera, et cetera. Roger would do exactly what he just said, which is, we're gonna need 75 witnesses, or we're gonna need 2 witnesses, so, but I do, I'm in land court a lot, I'm in Superior Court a lot. And so, yeah, so, I actually did I actually had a 2-week trial in land court in front of Judge Vey. So I do try cases significantly, so.
Yeah,
And we did win that case too.
which is notable.
Yeah.
We also do have as well a few attorneys at the firm who just litigate cases or focus on litigating cases. And as Amy explained, if something is really complex or it's going to require a ton of expert testimony, something that kind of makes it unusual, we will turn to those litigators. And it may be that you could meet them. They might come with Roger to talk about a case, but they might not as well. Roger may be consulting with them, and that's reflected in our bills. We are very transparent when it comes to, the fact that we're consulting, and we're very aware that we're spending public funds. And so, it's not like 6 of us are sitting around in a room, kind of joking around and saying, hey, how should we handle this? We get it. We're spending your money, it's your time, and we're careful with that, and we use it very efficiently and intentionally.
Thank you. I think I haven't been very careful with our time, so I will turn the next question to Joe.
There's a method to the madness. Roger, Lauren, and Amy from KP Law. Municipal issues do not always arise during normal business hours. How do you folks ensure timely access on urgent matters? And what can the select board expect in terms of communication, responsiveness, and availability from your team, directing everything to Connor? No, I added that last. Sorry, buddy.
We know that you don't work from 9 to 5, and we don't work from 9 to 5. And the 3 of us at this table can attest to the fact that we have answered calls and texts at any time of day or night, whether it's during the weekdays or on the weekend. And that's important. That's because that's when you need advice. As Amy said, we get a call from somebody, a town administrator who stepped out of a meeting to say,
Yeah.
do we have a conflict of interest law problem?
Right.
Do we have an open meeting law problem? And we didn't anticipate, we didn't anticipate X, Y, or Z. Like, how should we handle that? We get, and I'm assuming you wouldn't do this to us either, we get emails and calls and questions. This public records response is due tomorrow. Like, what are we supposed to say? And we will meet with whoever it is we're supposed to meet with. We'll have the full conversation. We'll either draft the response or send a draft response for consideration. If we weren't able to do that, if we didn't agree to do that as part of what we do for our jobs, then we would not be here. Again, our full practice, except for maybe 1.5%, is municipal law. All of our clients, I don't have any private clients.
I do not.
So all of our practice is from municipalities. And it is entirely clear to us that a response must be sent, whether it's, I've got this, I'm at a meeting, I'm sending this to Amy or Roger, or I've got this, I'm at a meeting, I'm gonna call you back as soon as I walk out the door. When I miss a call and I see it on my phone, I pick up the phone to call back. If someone texts me, and I will keep my eye on whether I'm getting text, I will text back. And, that's part of being who we are. And believe me, our families might prefer otherwise, but it is, as Amy said, this is a job we like to do, and that's part of the job.
Yeah, and whenever I respond to a client, whether it's email, call, text, whatever it is, however the method, one of the things, first thing I ask is time sensitivity. How time sensitive is this? Is this something you need an answer now? Is this something you need to answer 24 hours or a week? And it goes without saying that that is a first concern when responding to a client is how soon do you need something, and what is it that you need at that time?
And with all the changes in the land use realm, I can tell you that I'm at meetings at night. I'm at meetings, sometimes I'm out Monday through Thursday nights at different meetings. This week, I only have 2 nights that I'm out, but this is what we do. We're used to being out at night, and we're used to getting calls from somebody saying, is the 100 days, does that mean constructive approval? Little do we know it's the 98th day, but, we deal with it, and we deal with it right then and there. So, like Lauren said, we are extremely responsive when it comes down to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've already talked a little bit about litigation, so I'll just maybe ask if you could provide us an example of when you helped a municipality resolve a difficult litigation decision in terms of when to litigate, settle, and how to evaluate the risks.
I mean, that, as I said, that's part of every case, and it goes without saying that that's a discussion that we have constantly with our clients throughout the life of a matter, and I've got a case right now that I can think of that involves a historic commission that issued a decision several years ago. The litigation has been going on and on because of a very wealthy property owner who has no problem spending time and money, and so constantly having discussions with the select board about, is it appropriate to continue defending this matter? If not, how do we, what are the exit opportunities and things like that? So it's not a one-time discussion. It's a constant discussion that I have with my clients about whether to continue litigation and what the ongoing risk-benefit rewards are.
Quick follow-up on that. We here in Westwood enjoy great relationships with our neighbors. I noticed that you represent at least 2 of them, Dedham and Walpole. In the unlikely event that there were to be some kind of an issue that might come up where we could possibly be adverse to one another, I can't think of what that would be, but in that event, theoretically, how do you handle that situation?
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that, and most of the time, the common boundary issue works out to everyone's advantage. The number of times that clients have actually been adverse is very small in my experience. And I've been doing this a long time, but I also am the managing attorney at the firm, and so I'm responsible for assisting other attorneys at the firm to navigate these areas as well. We often, if there's something where there are business terms to work out, and the towns are healthily and happily working those out together, we just don't participate in that part. And then we participate in putting it to paper, making sure everyone's rights are protected in the same way. And we split the cost, which is usually a benefit. There have been limited times when we haven't felt comfortable, even though the towns have said we're not adverse. And in those instances, what we've done is recommended a kind of slate of other municipal attorneys who we believe would represent the town's interest well. We give them to both towns if there's 2, and we guarantee that you're going to pay the rate that you pay for us. You will not pay $1 more. If it is a more expensive lawyer, we will pay the difference, because you need to be able to have good counsel. And again, relationships and trust are really important. So it is very unusual. There could be I know this is going to be shocking to you, but like shellfish mulching is a very controversial issue where you can use shellfish, where you can do fishing for shellfish. So, if 2 municipalities are on the same arena and there's a dispute over who owns that could be the kind of example where we would say, you know what, no, thank you. Not only is it not good for you, for us to be, kind of navigating this for you, but it also puts us in an awkward spot. It puts you in an awkward spot. Hopefully, we're not going to have that problem here. I know Dedham, the Dedham Westwood Water District. You share Dedham Westwood Water District. I am the lead counsel in Dedham. Again, the first call that I would make if there's something that came up would be to Connor to say, hey, this is, the town of Dedham told me to tell you X, or the other way around, can we get together and talk about how you want to handle it? We will sometimes do disclosures and consents when appropriate, when there's an actual issue to be disclosed, but most of the time, it's out of an abundance of care, and I don't even mean caution, that we want you to know what we're doing, and we don't want you to be surprised. So we would be very communicative about that. We would do a disclosure and consent, and/or we would choose to recuse ourselves, but again, that happens very rarely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, I guess the next question is mine. We obviously rely heavily on our municipal boards, our resident volunteers, the engaged community. How do you approach supporting municipal governance, including advising elected officials, drafting warrant articles, supporting town meeting, and helping us navigate controversial public issues?
Yeah.
You've addressed some of that, but
Well, I'm happy to talk a little bit about town meeting in that context. So, town meeting is something that I believe that KP far and away excels at. I have been doing town meetings for 26 years. That is not to be taken lightly. I've survived many an uncomfortable late night, and am quite used to explaining the issues that are before town meeting in a way that people can understand, representing the board's interest and the boards and committees' interests as well, zoning or planning boards who have matters before town meeting, trying to get funding for settlements for ongoing litigation, explaining our budget line and trying to help people understand how it is that, we bill our time, the kind of transparency that we believe in for that. I don't want to sound braggy, but I'm just going to say I am the expert on town meeting. Everyone at the firm will come to me with a problem, and they have a question about a new article or a new issue or how should we write that? They will come to me, and I do town meeting training for every single one of our staff every year. Motions, articles. Town council, what's it mean to be a town council at town meeting? And we often say, and I think this is kind of a theme that runs through the way we see ourselves as lawyers, is today, that person in the audience who's asking a lot of questions could be our appointing authority tomorrow. We have respect for everyone. We know that people come at things from different angles with different goals and agendas. That is not our place to decide whether that person is right or wrong. They need a town meeting. The moderator says, Lauren, please answer that. I am up and answering the question. And, if the moderator says, Lauren, don't you dare get up, then I sit right in my seat and I don't move. But we understand that you are elected officials, and the people that are appointed by you also are in the public eye in a significant way. So we never want to be the conversation. We don't want someone to leave and say, could you believe she said that? That is not our place. We answer all the questions. We take them all seriously. There is no question that is a stupid question, especially at town meeting. And there are often, I would say, generally very controversial issues on town meeting warrants. And again, our job is to get up there and explain it. And if a board or committee member has a different perspective, then they get up and explain that too. It's not my role to censor board and committee members. And sometimes board and committee members agree with my perspective on things, and sometimes they don't. And, again, I am very respectful of where they're coming from. My job is to say what are the legal risks and benefits of a particular path, and that's what I would share.
And I'm just going to put on my client hat here as a town moderator. There's no one I would rather have beside me at town meeting than Lauren Goldberg. She has gotten me through a number of situations as a town moderator with great counsel. Again, it's why I joined the firm and why I love being a member of this firm is the opportunity to work with Lauren and work with her side by side on town meeting issues.
So with regard to articles, So for example, all the planning board zoning amendments will come through me. And one of the things that we find extremely beneficial is that, for example, with MBTA communities, every single one of those articles came through me. I worked extremely closely with EOHLC. We have relationships over there. We have a very, very strong relationship with the Attorney General's office. So I was actually on biweekly calls with EOHLC and the Attorney General's office to make sure that that warrant article that town was proposing was going to not just pass town meeting, but pass EOHLC, pass the Attorney General's. So we work very, very closely with town planners and planning boards on zoning amendments. The newest thing now is the battery energy storage and the clean energy. That's another hot topic where, is it solar, is it not solar, that kind of issue. And, the Attorney General, they're taking a very, very, very close look at all of those bylaws, as we all know. So it's very beneficial because you actually get the experience that I have from other towns, that other issues that we've run into. Like I can right away say, oh, we can't do that. And I can pull the AG's letter to, the determination that was, not in favor. So that is a benefit. But all of the zoning amendments do come through us. We also determine the quantum, because as you know, I want to say recently, but it wasn't.
Yeah,
It was probably 5 years ago. Section 5 changed, and some zoning amendments can now be majority. And so we do the quantum on those too.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I just add, Amy's experience in the zoning area is my experience in the, in the general municipal finance area. We work closely with the Attorney General's municipal law unit. We work closely with the Secretary of State's office, public records and elections. We work very well with the State Ethics Commission. If we really need to get something done, we'll give them a heads up. This is going to come your way. And all of that is to say, we really try to make sure that town meeting isn't where you're testing out whether your bylaw or your action is good. It's where you're looking for the town to approve an action. So, obviously, we looked at your town meeting warrant. We saw BES, we saw solar, we saw road acceptances and sidewalks. Yep. School projects, all of those things. We're going to make sure that your article is the MSBA article, and we're going to make sure that when you put that article on the warrant, you have options. It's raise and appropriate, transfer, or borrow, if that's what you want. If what you want is to say, hey, we're using free cash for this, and that's that, then it'll say free cash. Anyway, that whole process is ongoing all the time, and so what we are able to do is to leverage our experience in other municipalities, and as I said, we have meetings of the general municipal law group. We'll all sit down, we'll talk about these things. What are you seeing? What are you seeing? And I see a lot of it, and I also work very closely with the MMA. We have an MMA-like view of the state. We know what the little towns in Western Mass are wanting to do. We know what the island towns are wanting to do. We've seen what the towns on the border of New Hampshire are thinking. We're dealing with the towns that you have to go through Rhode Island to get to in Massachusetts. So it gives us, it's a very valuable benefit that you don't pay for separately. It's part of what you get when you use us.
Gotten a little bit off track for time, but Joe, I think you have one more question.
I do. I'm going to handle it a little bit differently. You know what, Marianne, I think you should ask this question, to be honest. I do have a very simple question, if I can just squeeze it in first.
Go ahead.
Amy, Amy, I'll ask you first. Can you please send a list of your wetland expert firms to Connor, please? And Lauren, on this, I have a question about fees, which I think Marianne will do better with. But on this schedule that you have, you said 6 hours per month of public meetings attendance. Is that in person or via Zoom?
It's whatever you desire.
Okay, Marianne, it's all yours.
And I don't think actually that what you just showed me doesn't look like our proposal, so I don't really know what that says, but.
I'm sure this is a smart, snappy synopsis that came to me by our town administrator.
Yeah, our proposal, basically, there's 3 different choices. One choice is just a straight hourly rate. Most of our clients use that. The next option is essentially a general municipal law kind of retainer. We call it a fixed fee option. It covers mostly everything that's regular day-to-day stuff. And it includes us coming to meetings or coming to office hours, however you want to do that. Litigation is outside, labor and employment is outside, as well as some of the more complicated stuff. We have a specialty legal services rate for matters like 40B or recounts where it's intensive and you can't just say, hey, I'm going to fit this in the time when I'm, not busy with something else. And then we have a fixed fee plus option. And the fixed fee plus option is essentially the all-in option. It still excludes labor, but it includes the first $5,000 of every bit of litigation that you do, regardless of, so if it's a case goes 1 year to the next, it's up to $5,000 for that case. And so those are the options. However, we are not, we use the word fixed fee now. We're not fixed with those options. We want you to have the agreement and arrangement that works best for you. There's many towns where I've made a proposal. After the fact, the discussion is, yes, we'd love for you to be town council, but can we talk about this? And the answer is, of course we can talk about this. We think it's a people thing. Who do you feel comfortable with? Who do you want to be your town council? And then we'll deal with the money thing. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, and it's not. And, there's several towns where our proposal is one thing, and we have a different fee structure for the first few years. Another town I can think of just offhand, we said, we think you're going to use town council all the time. We're going to set our retainer here. And within, 6 to 8 months, we saw, yeah, that's probably not going to be right. And we reduced it. So we are trying, again, to build a long-term relationship built on trust. And that doesn't come from being, I used the word rigid before, but it doesn't come from being rigid about who your team is or how you pay for legal services.
Now, Aaron has a final question. I just want to ask you, Lauren, one question before you do, Aaron, which is, what is it that drives you to do this work?
I have worked in the public sector since I graduated from law school. I never wanted to work at a big firm. I had one summer at a big firm, and it did not feel right for me. So right out of law school, I went to the Secretary of State's office, Public Records Division, and then I went to the Elections Division. And I felt it as a passion. I loved it. And at the Secretary of State's office, and I'm sure, as you know, when you work for government, there's only certain roles that are ahead, especially in a constitutional office. And so, I thought, what does my life look like if I stay here? And not that there was anything wrong with staying at the Secretary's office forever. It's a wonderful place, wonderful opportunities to do great work. But I was interested in a lot. So for me, every day is a challenge. Every day is interesting. I love mentoring and teaching, and I get to do that internally and externally. I like people, and I get to deal with lots of different people. And we talk about this at the firm. We have a belief that municipalities deserve good legal services at affordable rates, and we are proud that we get to do that. During COVID especially, it was just like all of the reasons that we talk about and how we try to raise our new associates. COVID was a perfect picture of why. We were doing all sorts of work. As you know, I do a lot of election work. I was working with the Elections Division to craft special legislation that would allow cities and towns to move their elections. We were working with the legislature on how to deal with town meetings. And, every day.
How to deal with permitting.
Permitting and constructive approvals. And, we were dealing with the courts being closed. And I did all that work from my house, as did everyone else. And I'd never been busier in my entire life. And my husband said, what is going on here? Everyone else is kind of out taking walks. What are you doing? But for me, I loved being useful because I was useful. I loved being able to provide concrete, practical advice. And I think that's part of this. The law is one thing, and we all have to know the law. Every person who comes to you as a potential town council, they have to know the law. we understand its application and its implementation. And so we can say, and I did this work with the charter committee, they said, oh, we want, do we want to have a quorum? And what would it look like if we didn't? And I can say, we have 10 towns with no quorum. They're always talking about adopting a quorum, or they're always saying, thank gosh, we don't have a quorum. We'll never, we'd never get our business done. So being able to bring that to real people like you who do good work, that's the reward. It is. And if I was interested in doing something different, I would have done so a long time ago. So this is where I feel right. It's the right place for me.
Thank you.
And just the final question, you sort of already answered it, but please tell us what sets your firm apart and why we should select you as town council. That's our final question.
Yeah, I was going to lead with the why me, why KP. So here, I'll do the why KP part. Truly, we have the most depth, the most experience, and the best understanding of law in action of any of our competitors. But I wouldn't want you to think that the competition with other firms is why you should choose us. We care greatly about what we do. In 2013, the firm changed ownership from 2 people to 23 people, and we're still in place 13 years later. There are very few law firms that can make that kind of a change, and that's because we are a team. I always say when I'm recruiting newer attorneys, there's no fighting, there's no anger, and Amy and Roger can both speak to this. We are all working together. My client is not a thing that people say at our firm. It is no one's client. Westwood, if we were to be appointed as town council, is the firm's client. And Westwood's happiness or satisfaction with what they receive for legal services is all of our responsibility. So I believe it's the personal relationships. I believe it's the sense of responsibility to municipalities. And I believe it's the team. Roger and Amy both worked at private firms, and Amy left and came back, and I am eternally grateful for that. And obviously, Roger left a lucrative career in the private sector to join us doing public sector work. And I think we're the best. I believe that. I wouldn't devote my life to that otherwise. And I love working with my colleagues and most of the time with all of our clients.
I can honestly say that we really do. We have a very nice group of people, and as soon as you send out an email to somebody like licensing, so I'll get a question about a licensing question. I don't know that much about it, so I send it to somebody, they will get it right back to me. We respond to each other, so it is.
I mean, what we provide at the end of the day is infrastructure for you and for your legal needs. And, to echo Lauren and Amy, we do it, in our opinion, better than anyone else in the Commonwealth.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to talk with all of you. Thank you.
Really appreciate the time, and we know it went a little over, so thank you for indulging us.
That's on me. Thank you.
No, just who you use for firms. Yeah, who do you use for wetland experts?
Oh, experts, okay, got it.
And
No. Oh, okay. I use Tetra Tech. Great to see you.
Oh, that's great, okay.
I use Tetra Tech, sometimes Epsilon. I'll give you a list.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Bye.
definitely.
Thank you, Amy.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you,
That guy
Amy.
back there in the blue
you. So
shirt
nice
came
to
in
meet
late.
you.
I'm sure he knows you, but I wanted to make sure. Yeah. That's why, I'm not having a TIA. Good seeing you again.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. Take care. You're welcome.
Do you need a minute?
No. Yes.
No.
Huh?
Oh, you need a minute?
I'm gonna stand, but no minute.
Yeah, I think we should go.
Me too.
Kept them long enough.
I don't know, Aaron. I'm getting a new computer on 3J now.
You are?
Mac and
Sorry.
Do you want a bigger one?
I like this, I think it's nice we're on the plane.
It's heavy. I would get a smaller one. if you know why, I wanted a desktop, and my kids and my husband talked me into a laptop. I don't need a laptop, I never got anywhere, but of course I want to bring it with me. It's heavy, it's too big. So yeah, I would go small.
When my son went to BC.
Hi,
Everybody.
Kate Feodoroff?
Kate,
Yes.
nice to meet you.
Kate.
Joe.
Hi there, Erin. Good to see you.
Brian, so nice to meet you. Joe, nice to meet you as
I'm
well.
so sorry for the delay.
Oh, gosh, don't worry about
Hi,
it.
Brian, I'm so sorry for the delay.
Sorry, we're so late.
Nice to see
No,
everybody.
it's the chair's fault, so
I want
always
to get a desk.
like being a mom.
The guy said, so you have a dorm room here? No. So the dorm room, got it.
Gotta get out of there.
Well, welcome, and again, apologies for the delay.
Not at all, not at all.
Getting to us. We're going to do some introductions, even though most of us know each other, but before we do that, we want to let you know that we have about 8 prepared questions for you, and we'll ask you to try to answer each of them in about 3 minutes or so, and you'll be given an opportunity for a closing statement to introduce ourselves, which we just did. I'm Mary Ann LeBlanc Cummings, Chair of the Select Board, and with me are my colleagues Erin Sibley and Joe Prevotera. And you know our Town Administrator, Connor Reed, Deputy Town Administrator, Molly Fitzpatrick. We'll ask you folks to please introduce yourselves and then take 3 to 5 minutes to talk about your firm and what you do, please.
Sure.
Sure, terrific. I'm happy to lead us in. So first and foremost, I'm Brian Winter, and this is Kate Feodoroff. Thank you for having us out this evening. We're very excited for the opportunity to meet with you all and to tell you a little bit about ourselves and a little bit about the firm. And so just in the interest of time, I'll jump right in if that's okay with everybody. And so I'll give a little introduction, turn it over to Kate. She can tell you a little bit about herself, and then I'll sort of wrap it up and turn it back to you with a couple comments just about my practice and me specifically. So Mead, Talerman, and Costa. So we're a municipal law firm. That's not a practice area within a law firm. That is the law firm. 95+% of our work is doing municipal law. And, you know, while the sort of origins of the firm go back to, maybe 2004, the current iteration began really in 2016 when the founding partners really wanted to focus primarily on town council work. We've all had a background not only in municipal law and the practice of law in this field, but also in different capacities in the municipal world. Lisa Mead was a 3-time mayor. Jay Talerman, one of our partners, was a multi-term moderator in his town. I've been on my conservation commission, et cetera. So we all had this connection to this field, and we wanted to do something that created not only a primary focus in municipal law, doing town council work, but also in a way that sort of fostered the kind of things that we enjoyed when we were working in that field, not as lawyers. And so we wanted to create something that focused around teamwork and how do we integrate, the services that we provide and that we're interested in providing into a law firm model. And so really, if you strip it down to its essence, the idea is to sort of replicate an in-house town council kind of model. So how do we, integrate and become part of the team in that sense? And so we do that in a number of different ways. And so we provide office hours. We attend meetings. We do training and seminars. We have a partner who's a primary contact. In this case, we're proposing that it be me. And so everyone who would be a primary contact on the town side would be able to have direct access to me, cell phone, et cetera. And so you always know, who to call, when you want to discuss something. And so there are a number of ways we do that. And one of the sort of key components to that also is the flat fee model. Now, that's not for everybody, we understand, and we've proposed 3 different fee structures, if you will. There's the, sort of traditional hourly. There's also the flat fee, and I'll say a few words about that in a second. And then there's a hybrid, which is sort of a combination of both. But with respect to the flat fee, it's not a retainer. You don't pay more when it's depleted. It's just a flat fee. So it's very predictable. It allows you to get, your budget under control. You know what it's going to be month after month. And if you go with the entire flat fee, if that's, what a town prefers, then all those sort of day-to-day services are included in that. And so the consequence of that is, it removes that sort of financial obstacle, if you will, to just picking up the phone and saying, well, I think this is something council should be involved in, let's call them. Or maybe council should be at this meeting, let's ask if they're, and so on and so forth. And so we've, all experienced that sometimes, there are financial obstacles, there may be other obstacles, but that was one of them that we thought the flat fee model could address very well. And it, in fact, has for the municipalities that have selected that. And so that gives us an opportunity to really integrate if that's what the town, prefers, and work with people, and a certain flow of information level work. And so obviously it's not a one-size-fits-all, we follow your lead. But it does, gives people an opportunity to work with us, so you learn how we operate and we learn how you operate. And that, I think, fosters a better working relationship, and that ultimately makes the work product a better work product. And so we brought that forward with the flat fee model. And again, just creating predictability. We never go over budget. And another component of it too is, and I'll just focus on litigation, we've noticed that, and we've experienced, one of the big drivers of town council costs, right, can be litigation. And so under the full flat fee model, a lot of that is eliminated. But it also tends to mitigate and reduce costs on litigation because there isn't a financial barrier to having us attend those meetings or picking up the phone. And so we like to think that we often can get involved and hopefully can mitigate or even solve problems, early on before, it gets worse and maybe intractable and becomes litigation in the first place. So that's been our model all along, and that's why, you'll see in the paperwork that we provided in the response that we're a partner-driven practice. And so we have associates, we have wonderful associates, very talented associates, but we don't throw associates at you. We want to be the ones that would be your primary contact, so that when we do get that call, a good deal of the time we're going to be able to answer your question, and we're going to be able to provide real-time advice that allows you to take the next step or at least understand what your options are, right then and there. Of course, there are other times where research is required and so on and so forth, or maybe even something more formal. There may be an occasion when a phone call is not sufficient, that you need a formal written opinion, and so that's a conversation, obviously. But there are also occasions where it's 6:55 and you're going into a 7 o'clock meeting and you need to call someone. And so that's where that comes in a really valuable way. So the other side of that is, accessibility. So that's responsiveness and providing information that's useful, like in real time. The other part is accessibility. So we have 3 offices, but I work out of the Millis office. And so as you know, Millis is right down the street. I don't live in Westwood, but I do live nearby. And so one way or the other, I'm driving by town hall on a regular basis. And so we do a lot of office hours in our communities. And so that's part of replicating that in-house town council model, being there, on the ground floor where it's all happening. And in this particular case where we would propose that I be that person, I am a stone's throw away. And so that's actually, even more so than other communities, incredibly proximate, in terms of being able to meet those needs in real time. So let me just stop there for a minute and give Kate a chance to introduce herself.
Sure.
But that's the general overview.
Yeah, so I'm Kate Feodoroff, and prior to joining the firm, I was the senior assistant solicitor in the city of Brockton, and it was a self-insured community, so we handled everything from civil rights complaints, all the labor matters, to big infrastructure issues. We have a wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant, all of those kinds of things. So our office handled all the legal issues for the entire city. And when my partner approached me, my now partner approached me about joining the firm, one of the things that was attractive to me was that collaborative approach, because I really do think it yields a better result. Just like I'm echoing Brian, I think we commit to the communities in a way that other firms don't, because we're routinely dealing with staff, department heads, and you, the select board. So I think as a consequence, the results are better because we don't have big egos We're appreciative of people giving their input and their perspective because you know this community better than anyone else. And we have to consider that when we're giving our opinion to you, because that's all really important, apart from the black letter law, right? Because there are always different approaches that you can take to address any given problem. And your problem must be or should be uniquely addressed. So it's one of the things that attracted me to this firm and I hope would be attractive to you. Another thing on the flat fee that I find is really fantastic is we don't feel constrained because we know there are municipal budgets. We know there are constraints on those budgets. And we're mindful when we're billing, you know? And one of the things about a flat fee is we're always encountering something that we may not have seen before, even though we're over 20 years doing this. So we've seen a lot, but there's always something unique about any given problem. So it sort of empowers us to take a deeper dive without feeling guilty. I don't know if that's the right word, but guilty for charging you. So we feel like the product at the end is better because we don't feel constrained by the budget, just like you would be constrained. So those are my thoughts.
No, and that's an excellent point. And that, because we hope that those things are the result of conversations that we're having with the client and with the principals that we're working with, you know, we get to decide, is this something, so, you know, this is maybe another way to put it, you know, there may be a situation that seems like rather routine and maybe mundane to us, and it turns out it's really not. And it's really something that's a big deal because we hadn't heard about the context and, you know, community input and all these other things, but then we hear about that, and it really is something very important. And so that gives us an opportunity to tell you that we can invest the resources in that without, you know, breaking the budget, right? Because now we understand. And so that's a great point as well. And I just wanted to mention, just sort of in conclusion, and we'll turn it back to you in just one second, that my sort of travel through this whole career, which has been an odd one, I won't go into all the details, but if you'd asked me 25 years ago, I would have told you I didn't even know what municipal law was and why anybody does it, but here I am today. And so I started at a firm in Attleboro, actually, that represented the city of Attleboro, town of Mansfield, and some other towns. And so it was very hands-on. We were right there. And so if the mayor wanted to speak to me, then the mayor was standing in front of me saying, I need to speak with you. And I practiced at other firms where it had more of a traditional, kind of an arm's length, you know, you call us if you need something and we'll respond to that need. And so I've seen it from different perspectives. And one of the reasons why I joined this firm is because of this sort of paradigm, if you will, this culture that we try to integrate and try to be part of the team, because I think it's more fulfilling for me. I think it's also more fulfilling for the clients that we work with, because we get to understand what you're going through and what you're seeing and all of that, and that helps us do our jobs that much better. So I will end on that for now and turn it over to you.
Joe?
Nice presentation, thank you. Westwood, as you know, has operated with in-house counsel for years. What opportunities and what challenges do you folks see in transitioning to a law firm model? And how would you ensure continuity of legal services while building trust with elected officials, staff, and boards?
So I'll start, if I may, a couple of different ways. And let me just premise it by saying that we have, even recently, been through this experience with other communities that had, you know, an in-house town council, not just recently, but for generations, in fact, in one case. And so we succeeded that individual, well-respected member of the municipal bar. And so we have a number of strategies. The first one is we're going to come in and we're going to meet with counsel and speak with counsel. In this particular case, your existing counsel and I know each other. And so that would be seamless in order to gather that information, understand. I already have some familiarity with some of the issues, some of the big issues, and all of the issues that are going on in town. So we have a little bit of a lead on that in some ways already, my understanding of it. But also, what I would suggest is we meet with department heads. Part of the issue is acceptance, right, and going through this process. And so we would want to meet with your department heads and sit down and be introduced, start to learn about, what are the parts I haven't seen yet, which is going to be a lot of information. And so we want to find out what's going on, what are the pending matters. We're going to assess and triage that immediately, pending litigation, deadlines, claims, all those things. We're going to get the actual files. We're going to meet with people and have those conversations. And that would just be the beginning. And so once we've done that assessment and we've started to integrate that work, which we do right out of the starting gate, obviously we exchange all our information and all that starts to happen right out of the starting gate. But then I would suggest, if it's the board's will, of course, it's not my choice, it's yours, how you would want to see us in terms of presence. Do office hours make sense? Do attending certain meetings make sense? And that's also not just for the delivery of services, but it's also because this is a big community shift. To go from an in-house town council to an outside law firm is a big deal. And so to raise sort of the awareness and the understanding and the comfort level around all that, I think presence is part of that. Kate, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think another benefit of moving, I've been in-house and now I'm outside, right? So I think one of the benefits of having a firm is you have a deeper bench, because the world was different 20 years ago, and having a general practitioner was quite common. And everything has become a little bit more complex in this legal world. And so we've all, although we have a broad, we've got a deep understanding of various aspects of municipal law, we all specialize in different things too. So although there will be a point of contact and Brian will be the point person, he may confer with one of us and say, have you ever had this? How did you approach it? And really rely on their experience too to be better informed himself. So just having a broader bench is really helpful in this day and age. And I want to echo the point on building that trust as being a really critical component, because I will tell you, the law department in the city of Brockton is on the first floor, and people would run down the stairs and say, Kate, I have a crisis, right? And that accessibility is really important. And I wasn't Attorney Feodoroff, I was Kate. So they felt comfortable busting in, even though it might have been a private conversation I was having with someone, they would bust right in. And so that is a shift in the paradigm for people to get used to. But because we're so accessible, it actually transitions very seamlessly. So we're accessible by mobile phone, text. I might be in a meeting and get a text and have to text someone else and say, take care of this, or I'll say, give me 5 minutes, or whatever. So we like to pride ourselves in our responsiveness and accessibility, so it doesn't feel like we're outside counsel. We feel like we're inside. So you have both benefits of us working collaboratively and then having the benefit of that deeper bench.
Just as a brief follow-up to that, if I
Yeah.
could, and just briefly, you've worked with us, you also have experience with other firms transitioning from the town council model to the law firm model. What do you expect our pain points here in Westwood to be making that transition?
Well, the first one is you're used to, my understanding is, you're used to having a presence with Pat Ahern, physically here and available during the day. That was a similar concern for a town that I recently went through this. Well, he literally was at town hall every day. So how are you going to sort of replace that? I mean, that's impossible, right? And so that's a real significant part of the transition, that culture shift. And so that we do have ways to do that, and we do that by providing office hours, by attending things. And so we do address that. So I see that as part of sort of the assimilation, process. It's tough, and it can be a little strange. But what I've learned every single time is that the physical distance, might be there, 8 miles or something down the road. But But there really isn't any distance, because what you find is that when you make the phone call, I answer it, and when you send the email, we respond, and when you say, can you come to a meeting, or even to give you a silly example, in another community, I got a call once, and it was about 10:45, and they said, hey, we're gonna meet and talk about the, whatever it is, at 11, can you come upstairs? And I said, well, I don't actually work at Town Hall. Can we make it 11:20 and I'll be there? I live, a couple miles away. And so it all just worked very seamlessly. That's been our experience. And to get back to your original question a little bit, another component of that is we're looking to identify efficiencies too. And so sometimes the workload and the volume sort of may recede a little bit in some ways. And I'll just give you one example. Contracting, procurement, it's sort of a bread and butter part of everything we do. Everything we do is we contract for it, right? And so one of the things we do is provide form contracts right away. And so that it's easier for us to review, because if you're using our forms, we're already happy with them. And it also streamlines things for your staff, because now we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And so we look for opportunities like that. So that's another one of the onboarding things we do right away. And so while we're doing that and trying to build that trust and that acceptance and also just awareness, I mean, sometimes people will say, well, who are you anyway? Never met you before. And so we want to get over those barriers very quickly. And then start to fill in with some of those ways that our level of experience and our sort of breadth can contribute in ways that maybe you haven't seen. And so we think it's been a net benefit, each time we've been through this.
I think in terms of a pain point too, there's always a little bit of a difficult point in the transition where people say, well, that's not how our prior council did it. And I think one thing that I would like to think about us is that we're not going to come in and say, oh, but that's wrong and you have to do it that way, because there are a lot of different approaches. So the way Brian and I interact with people it's different, right? We have different personalities and all of that, and different approaches to problems, right? Because we have different lived experiences. So I think we'd like to say we'd bring a new perspective, but still respect the old perspective too, because your prior town council had such a long history and developed all those relationships for such a long time that he definitely knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? So we would tap into that knowledge with also maybe bringing a little twist to things, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, Brian, you would be our proposed primary legal counsel, and just a quick question, who would be the backup, and how would you decide who's handling what?
So Kate Feodoroff would be, I don't want to say 2, 1A, 1B, something like that. And so we work in tandem, and we have done this and continue to do this in other communities as well. And so I hope you've already noticed we have something of a rapport together and can communicate and work together very, very well.
He's all right.
And so, yeah, still haven't worked everything out. But, so that in most cases would mean that communications and interaction would be through me. But in some cases, if I'm on vacation, if I'm in court, if I'm at another meeting, that would be Kate. And so we copy each other on everything, and so that there's no, sort of gap. So nothing gets sort of, slipped between the cracks. And also, the other component to that is, in some cases, I may be handling the task, whatever it is. In other cases, it might not be my area of expertise. And so the smartest thing that I can do is to put you in touch with someone smarter than me. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, that might be Kate. It might be another one of our specialists. But one thing I'm very mindful of, and this is what we mean by primary contact, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to do 100% of the work if I were selected to work with you. And that doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't make sense for you. I'm going to give you the best person for the job. You might not necessarily interact with that person because they would be working behind me until or unless you built a familiarity and a relationship, and maybe that would come forward a little bit more. But that's how we would manage it.
And we like to ensure that, I have a weekly meeting with my team, and we, confer on all the matters that we're working on. So even if you do get assigned another attorney for a particular matter because they have expertise, or what have you, we're always looped in. So we know what decisions they're making before they make them. So, and I will say Brian and I even did a meeting together this morning at 8:45.
Select board meeting. Started the day that way.
Yes, and both of us were there, so we didn't, we worked together to reach a solution for this group, but we're constantly working as a team within the firm too. So there's never kind of a dropped ball, hopefully,
Right,
never a
and-
drop ball.
And just how Kate noted a moment ago, like continuity during the transition, which is very important. We don't want a loss of information, a loss of expertise, and not just, the legal components, but the history and everything that goes along with that's all equally, if not more important than the law, right? But continuity between, us and the people that we work with in-house, our attorneys too. And so that's one way office hours works very, very well. So in the towns that I do office hours in, that's one way that we, really, sort of bring that all together, right? And so we go over the daily list and we go over the matters. And there's another community that decided office hours weren't the best fit for them for a variety of reasons, but we do a standing call. And that's to make sure that we're constantly going over that list and making sure it's all accounted for.
Thank you. In your view, what is the role of town council in terms of advising the select board and the municipal team? And can you give us an example of a situation outside of Westwood in which you helped municipal officials navigate a complex legal issue, which also had political and/or community implications as well?
Yeah, and I really appreciate the last part of the question, because that's actually where I was going to start, that we're very mindful of the context in which all these questions arise. And so I sometimes make a joke that if it were just so easy as reading the law and repeating it, then Google would be doing our jobs and we wouldn't be here, right? And so the context and the just the policy context, but the community context is just so important. And so one of the things I do for town meeting to get ready, not only prepare for the merits and the law, but I want to know what the context is, what are the issues, where are things coming along. So let me give you some concrete examples. And so every question is a mixed question, right? Nothing arises in a vacuum. And so we often, depending on who we're interacting with, will get a question, and it may seem, very simple. Is this a 20-day deadline or a 30-day deadline? Okay, well, there's probably more to that story, right? And so we're going to want to interact and find out some more. And so through that, we're going to educate ourselves. And depending on the situation, we're going to, we'll devote the appropriate amount of time to finding that out, right? Not every situation is going to be different. And so I won't give this morning as an example.
No, don't.
But I'll give lots of other examples of, sometimes it requires a sit-down. We'll come out and meet, and we'll try to learn those things. And then sometimes we need to review materials. We need to speak to people, maybe their interviews and so on and so forth. But then when we finally are ready to, make a recommendation or give advice or something, and whether it's confidential or public, that's, it depends on the situation, right? But we're going to give, if you ask for it, an objective legal opinion that's mindful of those situations, because now we'll know where you're coming from. We'll know what, sort of the sticky parts are or points to it. We're going to know, sort of what the complexities are. And so you're not just going to get, well, you asked me what Chapter 48, Section 7 says, here's what it says. We'll provide that context, because not everything is a 1 and a 0, right? And so maybe the answer to your question is to present options and to help you understand the policy considerations, the cost and benefit of making certain choices and what those choices are. And so these are questions we're faced with multiple times every single day, to understand that and to help guide you through that. So we're not policymakers, obviously. And so we don't play that role. Others play that role. You play that role. But we can advise on the legal implications and consequences and your legal options, some of which you may already be aware of, others maybe we bring forward to the table, and so that you can have a complete understanding, an eyes wide open understanding of, the choices in front of you and the ramifications of those choices so that you can make a comprehensive decision with a solid understanding before you do so.
And I think also, I mean, it's important to know, like, I think the worst mistake of many lawyers is to say, you can do this or this, tell me what you want to do. That doesn't help most people because you need to explain why, you need to explain the cost, risk, benefits, and sometimes you need to give guidance and recommendations. Our recommendations aren't always taken, and there are several reasons that sometimes our advice is ignored, but we really are not just lawyers, we're counselors. And I think oftentimes that gets lost in the messaging, and maybe it's lost in the failure to really elicit what the true question is. So digging into that is really important because anyone could answer a question and give a Black's Law Dictionary answer, right? But you really don't know what the question is until you have that background. So we like to think we give options, we evaluate those options with you, and we provide counsel.
I want to talk about time, and in the interest of time, I'm going to abbreviate my question. How do you handle off hours, number one? Number two, give me a reasonable time frame. I've sent text messages to Molly and said, ASAP. I might say, not urgent. But if I send something ASAP, give me a time window so I'm not left dangling.
Yeah, so I think accessibility.
And how do you handle the off hours?
Yeah, we don't have off hours.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was going to ask you to repeat the question. Like, I'm not familiar with that term. So I'll let you go. I was just going to say, so we understand that you guys live in a 24/7 world.
Yeah.
Right? And whether you're at the grocery store, the coffee shop, you're out to dinner with your family, whatever, whatever the situation, this is all happening. And you're getting calls and emails on weekends. And so we reciprocate.
Yeah.
I spoke with Kate extensively on Sunday about a pressing matter, and so we really don't have off hours, excuse me. And so we do, of course, a lot of work at night because you do a lot of work at night. And so there really isn't a time that I can think of when I haven't gotten a phone call or a text or something. And so our practice, and it's, just I would say for all the partners, is that's what we do. That's what we're used to. And so we respond to that. And sometimes I know it's, I'm not going to say it's early in the morning. Can we talk? Or I know it's late at night. Can we talk? Or I know it's the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've taken hundreds of those, and Kate has as well. And so, obviously we have lives too, and we have other commitments. But the idea is to respond to those immediately. And if we can answer it in a text, great. If it's no, call me. I'm available. I'm in the car right now. Call me. And so Kate has had the pleasure of taking calls while my kids are in the car because it needs to be answered.
We can provide the cell phones of our spouses at the end of the evening, and they can
In the event you can't
confirm
reach
it.
us.
I should have been clearer, okay? I come from a hospital environment. If I page you,
Yes.
I expect an answer within 5 minutes. If you don't answer me in 5 minutes, I know you're not dodging me, you're in the weeds. I need to go to Plan B. What's your Plan B? Give me a time window when I can reasonably expect to hear from you. That's all I'm asking. Because your phone might be dead, and I'm left there dangling.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why we have
The
the backup.
redundancy. Yeah, exactly. So, for example,
If your phone's dead, where's the redundancy?
Brian. And if
His phone
Brian's
rings too?
If Brian's phone is dead, I hope both of our phones aren't dead. That's why we have a 1 and a 1A.
And also, it's not just my phone, but I also have my laptop. I also have a tablet. And so there's always another way. A lot of times I'm in the office or I'm with someone or talking to someone who's in the office. And so if I don't actually see it, let's say I'm on a call or I'm on a Zoom meeting and I don't see it come in and it's very urgent, someone else is going to see it. Kate will see it. And so that's why we have that redundancy so that nothing sits.
Yeah.
That's the idea. And so you're right. You might not know if your text made it to Kate. And so how would she know to pass it on? But I mean, I've been doing this now 25 years the same way. I mean, this is before cell phones, so I'm exaggerating, of course. But that's why. And there have been times when I've been in, an in-person meeting and I see my phone is alerting me that someone's trying to reach me, and I'll immediately say, Kate, can you jump on this? I'm not going to be free for any time soon. And so that's why we build in those redundancies so nothing gets lost.
How do you approach advising municipal clients on litigation decisions, including when to litigate, when to settle, and how to evaluate the legal and financial risks? And can you give us an example? Thank you.
So, right, this is a big one, right? This happens a lot, and litigation is a big driver of costs and risk, right? And so every conversation, sort of begins with just risk assessment. And so I don't want to repeat things we've already said, but that whole process that we go through in order to understand and evaluate what the situation is now, hopefully, and this is part of the model we started talking about, these things aren't coming out of the blue. Sometimes they do, and there's nothing that can stop that. But a good deal of the time, we see these things coming. And so it's not a surprise to us. We've already had some of these preliminary conversations when it, finally arrives, if it does arrive. And so given that, while some of us have, are pure litigators and some of us just have significant backgrounds in litigation, that's not sort of a one-size-fits-all tool, right? I mean, sometimes the whole point is to avoid litigation. Reduces costs, reduces exposure, reduces risk. And so there are some fights that need to be fought. I get that. That's not our decision. That's this board's decision. But we don't come in saying, okay, we've got a piece of litigation. Here's how we're going to take it to trial, et cetera. So we're going to look at what your options are. We're going to look at non-litigation options. We're going to discuss, are there off-ramps? Are there other ways to evaluate this that you should be considering? And what are the issues behind the issues behind the issues, if that made any sense? Because oftentimes the thing that you're first presented with is not actually the heart of the matter. And so as you unpack it, you start to learn maybe how to diffuse it, how to de-escalate, and some other strategies for addressing it. And then it's going to be a conversation. Litigation, obviously, is controlled and directed by the select board. And so we're going to come and we're going to want to sit down with you and discuss. We just received this. We've got some things to go over in terms of strategy. And that also, and I know I'm trying not to repeat myself, but I'm about to, that includes the policy implication. Litigation doesn't occur in a vacuum, right? There could be consequences that are outside just the scope of that narrow piece of litigation, and there could be implications. And there's precedent, right? Every piece of litigation is maybe a decision that weighs on everything else you're working on. And so we want to be mindful of all of those things. Sit down and have an executive conversation about how you feel, this board feels, is best to address that with all of those things in mind. And that's the counselor part of counselor at law, right? I mean, we could be attorneys and litigate, and if we need to do that, no problem. That's what we do too. But before we get into that mode, we want to have that conversation.
Just have a brief follow-up, if I could. I understand you've done some work for some of our neighbors with whom we enjoy very good relationships, but on the off chance that there could be some kind of an issue, for example, I see you've done work for Denham, for Norwood, how would you handle that?
So hopefully we know about the potential conflict well in advance, so we can already have a conversation about what would happen in eventuality. I can't think of a time it ever surprised us that there was a conflict. Because, I mean, we obviously, as a law firm and lawyers, vet these things thoroughly to make sure that that kind of thing doesn't happen, but occasionally it does. And also, it may be something that's unavoidable. So we're not doing town council work for either of those towns, so those are special counsel engagements that occasionally occur. So those are easier to manage. But when it does occur, my preference is to have a conversation with you about the priorities. Is this a situation where we should work with you and be conflicted out of that engagement? That can be fine. Is this a situation, our rules of professional conduct sometimes allow us to do both if they're compatible, certain, if they meet certain parameters. So sometimes that's a solution depending on the situation. And then there may be a third category too, where depending on the nature of the issue, it should be someone else entirely. That's exceedingly rare, I think, but I think there's maybe once or twice where there's been a situation, where we may have worked with you so deeply already that, it makes sense to work with someone else on that very discrete, finite issue. But I can't,
And
maybe one
it
time that's
rarely
happened.
happens, because we're growing, right? We're I'd say, medium-sized firm, but we're not so all over the map where we have these, conflicts that occur on a regular basis. So I literally can only think of a handful of times that it's ever happened with us, because we're frankly not as big.
How would you support our elected and appointed boards, particularly in the town meeting context?
Yeah, so town meeting is the big one, right? And the annual town election, those are the really big, major events of the municipal cycle. And so I have a preference to get involved early and often. I like to front load the work. And so, I'll just use town meeting as an example. We like to understand, where the warrant article's coming from, what are the issues, how are you putting it together? Not just in terms of substance, but also, what's the strategy for making it all zipper together? It's complicated. There are a lot of people to coordinate and a lot of competing interests. And so, if it's the board's, pleasure, we'd like to be involved, very early on in that, so that by the time we get to town meeting, everything is hopefully, identified, addressed, and worked out. And that varies from town to town, depending on the needs and your history and your preferences. In some cases, we're writing warrant articles, and we're working on things at a very grassroots level. In other cases, towns send us the warrant, kind of towards the end of the process and say, oh,
Yes.
town meetings, next week, any issues with this? And so it can be anything in between. That's not my preference.
It's
I
already
want to be clear
posted.
about that. Yeah, it's already posted. Can we fix this in an amendment? I really hope so. And so sometimes that happens. That's obviously not my preference. Annual town election, the same thing. These are complicated things. They're costly events to put on. They're complicated. They're enormously consequential. And so we want to be involved early on in the planning and the discussions so that we can head off some of those things, identify them, hopefully. Can't see everything that's coming in the future, but we hope to identify as many as we can so that we can be as prepared. And I think I mentioned earlier, at the screening committee meeting, the ideal town meeting, which has never happened, but, the ideal town meeting is when we don't have to answer any questions because we've already addressed this stuff. And so town meeting goes exceedingly smoothly, and everyone says, well, isn't that remarkable? That went so well, because they never saw the hours and hours and hours of hard work that we put into it to make it happen. So I said, that's an ideal. I didn't say it was a reality, but that's what we aspire to. And so, there are some towns where I'm getting ready for the annual town meeting, beginning in October. We're working on it.
Yeah, and then
And the budget cycle drives it, of course. And so, yes.
And then during town meeting, we literally run around. Or at least I have done that in the past. Okay, that happened. Now I'm gonna run over there and talk to Connor or whomever, and figure out on the fly what to do. If there's conflict, where that conflict began, and try to figure out a solution on the fly. And we have a lot of experience, so we're oftentimes figuring out things on the fly. So a lot of prep and then a lot of running.
One thing that you can count on every time is that you can't see everything that's
Something
coming. And there's
unexpected.
always going to be surprises.
Yeah.
Was it Murphy's Law exists for a reason, and so you anticipate the fact that you can't anticipate everything. And so there's a lot of, in the moment, on the ground work that happens. And so it gets very exciting, gets very busy, we try to meet that. Because, any given day during town meeting, or any other time of the season, but particularly town meeting season, we're on the phone from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. because it's all happening that way.
Joe?
Legal services represent an investment for taxpayers. Can you describe your proposed fee structure? I think you already went over this.
Yeah.
So I think we're good on that. Let me see if there's anything else, Kate. I don't see anything else. Aaron or
Yeah.
Marion, do you guys have any questions on
Go
the
ahead,
fee schedule?
No, thank you. I think we have already discussed it.
good.
Yeah, so if no one has anything else, I was just going to give you an opportunity to make a closing statement or let us know what sets your firm apart and why we should be selected as our town council.
Sure, and I'll be brief, and then Kate, I'll give you, turn it over to you as well. So I really think, the key difference, I mean, you have good choices in front of you. You have excellent law firms with excellent lawyers. There's no bad choice here, let's be honest. The reality is, we're a very mobile, flexible group. We're built for speed and agility, really. We're a small group. And we're close. And so really, we do municipal law, our competitor does municipal law. We have a lot of expertise in that, so that's not really a distinction. What's different is, because we're a small group and because we're partner-driven, when I leave here and you call again, you're gonna hear from me, and that's not gonna change. When you ask someone to attend a select board meeting, that's gonna be the person that you interviewed with, that's me, and so on and so forth. And so that continuity, that familiarity, that accessibility is really key to what we do, and that's the proximity factor. And one of your, or several of your questions were about the transition from having someone who's a Westwood resident, a longtime resident, and town council. And that's one of the ways that we make that actually work, because it's difficult. And being present, and talk about, getting ready for town meeting season. The last thing I want to do is go to town meeting and have no one know who I am, right? I've actually been to one of your town meetings, and so hopefully I have a little, maybe there's a head start there or not, but that's really important to us as it is for you. And so we think the flat fee model actually caters to that, if that's something that this board is interested in ultimately. That actually fosters that, because then we can do a lot of those things, and you never have to wonder, does this fit within our budget? Where are we this month? And all those questions just sort of go away. Because if you need someone here, if you need me here, then that's where I'll be. And so I think that's a really big difference between how we practice that integration and that teamwork.
Yeah, and I hope the screening committee called some of our clients, because I think the proof is with them. And I feel really proud of our office. This is when I start to get goofy. Everyone makes fun of me when they watch these interviews, but I feel really proud of what we built here, because I really do feel like it's different than other firms, because we have a real passion for this work, and I hope our passion shows in our work product. And, we've learned a few things along the way. So we'd be really thrilled to be part of your team, and I hope you select us, and I would love to work with you and look forward to doing it if possible.
Same, well put.
Great. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Delightful to be with you. Thank you for your time again. We apologize for the delay, given
Not at all.
the
Thank
earlier part of the meeting, but thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank you
giving us
for
as much
having
time
us.
as you did. You've had a longer evening than we have, and thank you.
Right. We're still going.
Yeah.
So nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
Kate, pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Brian, good to see you. Hey, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So now we need to deliberate for the second time this evening. We do have the benefit, as I said, Lou Rizzoli is here. Lou, of course, is former counsel to the Massachusetts House of Representatives, longtime Westwood resident, and basically the founder of affordable housing in Westwood. Lou, did you want to make any comment for the benefit of the board? Oh, sorry.
yes,
Could you just sit right here, Lou,
we need
if you
for the
want
microphone.
to say something?
No, other than, we spend a lot of time, the committee, and they were great, interviewing 4 firms, and we came up with the 2 unanimously. You cannot make a bad choice. These 2 firms will serve the town very, very well, each of them. So, good luck trying to pick the one.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your service, Lou. Obviously, we want and need a firm that will provide excellent representation to the town and be accessible and also affordable as well. Aaron, you served on the screening committee, so you've now seen these firms twice. So why don't we start with you?
I'm sure. I agree with Lou. The committee, the 2 firms both come highly recommended. They both have extensive experience over the years with our town. So there are various town employees who are on our committee who could vouch for how accessible and easy to work with their contacts were at both firms. So to me, that's really not a differentiating factor. I personally have had experiences, and I can say the same thing. I find them personable, easy to work with, just very accessible with some of the limited experiences I've had. So I think they both come extremely highly recommended. I mean, I guess I think the benefit for this, there is going to be a learning curve here, switching from having Pat in his office versus having an outside firm. I think the term deeper bench resonates with me. I think that the benefit of our town going through this model is that we will have an access to more subject matter expertise than obviously Pat had, and sometimes Pat would have to go out. So I guess I would say I have a slight preference for a bigger firm, because if we're going for a deep bench, KP has 50 attorneys in 4 offices, all in Massachusetts. And Mead, Talerman has 21 attorneys. Again, it's a medium-sized firm and also probably big enough, but in terms of having a deep bench, if you are assigned, one thing that came up with our screening committee was sort of these subject matter experts, like the land use attorney who came, would be assigned to her counterpart in town, like Nora, to work directly with them. If Nora were somehow didn't love that relationship for one reason or another, I feel like having a deeper bench would mean, okay, well, then we have other land use attorneys that we could match you with. So I feel like if they have a deeper bench, so I guess, but truly, I think they're both could not become more highly rated. I mean, they both have very good reputations, and we've spoken with previous clients for them who basically say the same thing. They've been very happy with them.
Thanks, Aaron. Joe?
Were you looking at my notes?
Oh, no. I'm so blind, I can't see anything. Yeah, I mean, the same thing with the redundancy, like everything that Brian was saying, I think is true with a little more of it at KP, because they just have more people, they just have more bodies. So in terms of, in case of an emergency, if we needed really to get somebody, I'm sure we could probably get someone at either firm, but there's more redundancy and a deeper bench at KP. And this wouldn't be my primary driver, but the proposal from KP is also less expensive. So which was a surprise to me, because to me, they're sort of the biggest firm, the preeminent public law firm in Massachusetts. So I assumed that it would be the opposite, that they would be the most expensive. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that their proposal was lower. It's not the deciding factor, but in the event of a tie, I would love to pick something that could save our taxpayers money on an annual basis, if all other things are equal, and I think they almost are.
Connor, do you have any comments? As far as either firm?
They are both great firms. In full disclosure, I've worked with one significantly more, which is Mead, Talerman, and Costa. They were town council in my prior community the entire 14 years that I was there. So they're an excellent firm. KP is a great firm as well. I think it's a difference of perhaps style that the board has to pick among, but MTC is great working with. But if you ask folks in Westwood who worked with KP, they would tell you the same. So try to be delicate here, as it's your choice.
Mary Ann, it's in your arena. Any thoughts?
I was just curious what you meant by style in that context.
One is a larger firm. There are benefits there, and I think that Attorney Goldberg and her team made a good pitch that, they still are available. I just don't have the personal experience of that, that's all I'm saying there. I know with MTC, the redundancy was never an issue. I also understand I'm the town administrator and I was there too, so magically, usually when I'm trying to get a hold of folks, they're usually pretty available. So that's not always representative, but from my experience, again, speaking strictly from my past experience, working with MTC was very good. We navigated a handful of very complex legal issues that are in the public sphere, so I'm not speaking of school, including receivership cases, mobile home parks, that we were able to secure favorable results on things that are highly complicated and high risk. So I just don't have that experience with KP, not because they can't do it, just I haven't worked with them. So I don't want that to color your decision heavily, please.
So it sounds like, Aaron, you and I are on the same page as far as the bench size.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to pick one, I would pick KP. And to me, coming in as a relative newcomer, they are the preeminent firm. They are the biggest firm. Lauren Goldberg really is like the expert who speaks at all the seminars and who writes all the articles. And I think the other benefit of going in-house to either one of these firms is sort of I forget which firm mentioned it, but they bring to us the experience that they've had with other municipalities. So if we are saying, oh, we're having this issue, they might say, oh, we just had that with this other town. Or, we've done that before in this town. And I just think a bigger firm has more of that. More sort of off-the-shelf advice based on something similar. So I feel like the more lawyers you have and the more clients you have and the longer you've been doing this and they've been longer and bigger than the other firm, they just have more experience to draw on to say, yeah, we have seen that before, or we've seen something similar. So to me, that's like it just tips the scale.
I feel like we should move along, but I have to be honest. I'm looking at the motion here, I see which fee structure the board desires. I have not done the homework on that.
And I don't think we need to do that tonight.
Excellent.
Yes, I agree with Mary Ann.
I'm happy
Excellent.
that, under all circumstances, all models from both firms fit within our existing budget. So I think it would be appropriate for the board to pick the firm and then delegate negotiation of those details to me and the finance
That's
department.
even better.
We do this to make you happy, Joe.
God bless you. Each and every one.
Yes.
I'll just comment that I agree with what's been said by Lou and others. These are two excellent firms with excellent reputations, both of which have served this town very well over the years. I've had experience personally in the town working with both firms, excellent firms. So as was said, we can't go wrong. I hear what you're both saying, Joe and Darren, about the value of having a deeper bench. So as I understand, that is the direction you are both going in. I would suggest that one of you make a motion.
Sure. I move that the town of Westwood appoint KP Law as town council effective August 1st, 2026, and direct the town administrator to finalize and execute on the board's behalf a legal services agreement with the firm consistent with their proposal for the same, and to take any other pre-agreement activities necessary to effectuate the legal services agreement.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call, Joe?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. And just want to thank all of the firms that applied for the position, particularly our two finalists, and thank Mead Talerman for all of the wonderful service they have provided to the town. And I want to thank again the screening committee, particularly you, co-chair Rizzoli, Connor, and you as well. So, did we make the motion about delegating? Yeah, okay, we're good on that. Okay, with that, our next meeting will be August 3rd at 6 PM, hybrid meeting here in the Westwood Community Room. With no other business before us, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.